what do we know about this arraignment? What's going to happen?
Well, this is the third attempt to arraign Mr. Nauta, and I expect it'll go through this time. Judge Edwin Torres, who's the magistrate out there, kind of let it be known, 3 strikes and you're kind of out. So the first time there was just an issue related to his airplane making it to Florida in a timely fashion. Apparently there was some weather-related issues. The second time, the attorney he had, he was unable to retain. The attorney apparently not long before court indicated that he wanted a larger retainer. The effort didn't work out and he didn't have a lawyer with him. So Judge Torres said to him, next time I see you, have a lawyer. And that's what we're there for. So this is going to be a procedural matter. He's going to be arraigned. The judge is going to say to his attorney, Mr. X, whoever that may be, have you had a chance to review the indictment with your client? Yes, Your Honor, I have. Do you waive its public reading? Meaning, do you want me to read this whole thing in court, or are you going to just say it's okay? The court will say, the defense lawyer will very likely say, I waive its public reading. How does your client plead? He pleads, Your Honor, not guilty. And then the arraignment will be essentially over. They may talk about bail conditions, but he'll be released, I'm sure, on the same conditions that he's released on now. And then the case will be merged with Mr. Trump's case, and he'll appear next time Mr. Trump does.
Now, I know that Walt Nauta is being charged alongside the former president. What do you think it is that perhaps he's being accused of that makes him actually be getting the charges rather than so many other Trump aides and so many other people that have been around the former president that could have potentially also been involved in charges similar to this?
That's a very good question. So Walt Nauta is kind of a little bit of a sad story. He's a former Marine. He became kind of a personal valet to Mr. Trump, helping him get everything from Diet Cokes to literally, hamburgers, helping him make sure his suits were pressed, fixing his collar before TV appearances, very, very administrative type of things, and became very trusted by Mr. Trump. And he then essentially became someone who traveled with him continuously. Unfortunately for Mr. Nauta, he is alleged to have made false statements to FBI agents and to have participated in the moving of boxes, which the government has alleged in the indictment contained very highly sensitive information. And in fact, there is a picture that apparently Mr. Nauta took on his own phone of some of these boxes that were kicked over that we've now all seen. It's part of the indictment and seen over TV, where the boxes are splayed, showing very sensitive documents. When he was interviewed by the FBI, he was asked about whether he was aware of documents being moved, and he said he had no idea about any of that stuff. And apparently now there is very substantial evidence, including, I believe, surveillance video showing him actually moving documents, or certainly documents being moved and him being aware of them. So he is now caught up in this rather drastic vortex. I understand that efforts were made, very substantial efforts by Jack Smith, the prosecutor, to have him cooperate in the investigation. Who knows what kind of deal he could have gotten. Perhaps he could have gotten immunized. Perhaps he could have gotten a non-prosecution agreement. But that apparently fell through.
And we are recently learning that some of the charges, or the reason that the original search warrant was brought by the FBI, was actually because of potentially moving documents that officials had been asking for just days before they had requested them. Is it possible, or do we know if Walt Nauta could have been involved in this, or is that purely speculation at this point?
Well, the strong insinuation is that he was involved in it. The affidavit in support of the search warrant was recently ordered unsealed by Judge Reinhardt in Florida. So that affidavit, although in redacted form, meaning that some information has been blacked out because it's considered either highly sensitive or for other legal reasons, which we don't really have to go through, is actually online. And there is a reference to someone called witness number 5, moving boxes and moving documents. And there's a strong inference, certainly, that Mr. Nauta was a participant in that, or certainly knowledgeable of it, and denied it, and was asked to move boxes by Mr. Trump, the allegations are, before Trump's lawyer, Evan Corcoran, who we now know is cooperating with the government, was able to know about it, and Corcoran put in a letter to the government indicating that all documents had been given over pursuant to the request, and in fact, they had not been, and the allegation is that Mr. Nauta was aware of that effort to obstruct compliance with the grand jury subpoena.
How serious are the charges against Walt Nauta as well as the former president?
They're really serious. An obstruction charge in and of itself is very, very serious and carries certainly years in jail as exposure. The way that potential sentences are determined is based upon the crime that the person is alleged to have obstructed. And the obstruction here goes through under this Espionage Act, even though Mr. Trump is not accused of being a spy or espionage in that sense. The Espionage Act also just punishes people who retain documents that are confidential that belong to the United States of America and haven't returned them upon appropriate request. Mr. Trump has his defenses saying that he was entitled to these documents because they were either his own, which is going to be a hard argument to make candidly, or that he declassified them, which is going to be another hard argument for him to make given the tape recording in which he apparently states that he is aware that some of these documents are not declassified. But it's a serious offense. It is a serious offense. And this young man who's 40 years old, who seems like a stalwart trooper and a good guy in many ways, there was an effort made to flip him, to cooperate him, and that fell through, and he's now going to be wed to Mr. Trump's hip. So whatever happens to Mr. Trump, I think will happen to Mr. Nauta.
Do you expect other charges to come out against other people in this case? We know at least so far 2 people have been charged with, related to the classified mishandling of classified documents, but we know that there are dozens and dozens of people that worked both at the White House at the time that the documents were allegedly taken, and then of course dozens and dozens of people also at Mar-a-Lago, the state where former President Trump was actually keeping those documents.
Generally speaking, prosecutors make cases by trying to cooperate lower level individuals going against a higher level individual. I think discovery will likely show that there are numerous people who are already been either cooperating, that is required to plead guilty, pursuant and in receipt of which they would receive a cooperation agreement, which would permit their sentence to be reduced by the judge. So there probably are a number of people who have either already been charged or have already been immunized, that is promised not to be prosecuted, or receive what we call non-prosecution agreements, which is not immunity, but it's a cooperation agreement where in exchange for your cooperation, you're just not prosecuted at all. But there are other people who could certainly fall on this, and other people could be charged. And the speculation is that Jack Smith is now looking at whether or not charges would be appropriately brought in New Jersey based upon conduct that occurred in Bedminster, where Mr. Trump has his golf course. And where allegations have been made that Mr. Trump was engaged in similar obstructive type of conduct in relation to documents that were maintained there. So the saga is certainly not over as far as this is concerned.
Obviously, the arraignment being really one of the first steps in those criminal proceedings there. Michael Bachner, attorney who works with white collar criminal defense attorney there. Thanks so much for joining us. Mike, anything else that I didn't ask, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think as always, Luca, you've been more than thorough, and I appreciate the opportunity to help explain this to your audience.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Bachner.